And we are going. Welcome. I get to do a scripted version of this now. Welcome, bienvenidos, and welcome to another episode of Sayonara Baseball. My name is Brandon Payne-Beiser. Kazuki Kiba, the fearless leader, is here. We're not as anxious and as running crazy as we were on Monday. It is now Friday. We have an off day in Major League Baseball today before the divisional round begins tomorrow. So we're back where we all started 5 years ago. We got 4 games to review and 4 games to preview. Do American League first, National League second. Let's get started. American League. You only got 1 series to start, and that is the Detroit Tigers. Absolutely taking care of business, Bachman-Turner overdrive style against the Houston Astros. Now, let's talk about this because this is utterly wild. Game 1. Tarik Skubal gets his postseason debut and is dominant. 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 walk, 6 Ks, no earned runs. The bullpen holds up as much as they can. We all have concerns about Foley in the back. They did fine. Detroit scored all their runs on singles, RBI singles in the second inning. The Astros scored their run on a single. Did they score a run on their single too? It was an RBI single as well, I think. And Houston's bullpen was great. That's what we knew to happen. They put Blanco in long relief, but they still lost 3-1. So basically, the consensus was, oh, Houston, all I have to do is Houston is not just do better than that tomorrow, and they'll win. But there's one small problem. And I don't think it's a real. I always go back to it's a real concept, but momentum is kind of a real thing at this point with the Detroit Tigers. Top 8 bases are juiced. Ryan Presley is, hanging on by a thread. They bring in Josh Hader, and Josh Hader goes against pinch hitter Andy Ibanez. And what does Andy Ibanez do but hit a bases clearing double that just bounced around everywhere it could in the outfield and takes the lead 4-2. Then they got another one on top of that, go up 5-2.
Yeah, it's 5-2. It's a 3-run bases clearing.
Oh, it's 3-run bases clearing. That's right, because I'm confused by the box score, the pitching line for Hader about what was attributed to Hader. So yeah, so it's 2-2, the bases clearing, 5-2. And then they shut down, game over. And we'll see this happen again in the Mets series of 1 hit at the very end. That's all you need. But I think the whole Minute Maid Park fan collective, the entire group there, was just stunned. The pitcher that you had, stolen away from everywhere you could, Josh Hader, got blown up after Ryan Presley, who had been there, one of their steady arms in the back end of their bullpen, also gets blown up. And it ruins a Hunter Brown, a great game, Hunter Brown. The Tigers go full bullpen in that entire game. And the stat of the day was the entire starting lineup in that game for the Tigers payroll was less than 1 year's salary for Josh Hader. The Motor Kitties win 5-2, and they're sitting pretty on Wednesday night, going back up to Cleveland, which is a less than 3-hour drive between Detroit and Cleveland. So you have the closest possible game they could ask for. And now we have a divisional matchup. So we're just, anything on the Astros before we get into what we're about to talk about, which is probably the most bizarre series you're probably going to see what's going to happen here?
I mean, one thing is we lost the Astros Invitational. It's no longer 80 years in a row. Just ended at 7-year mark, starting from 2017 to 2023. They always made it the American League Championship Series. That one opportunity is gone. And then the other part I would say is I think Yankees fans are probably happy to God because they won't.
The Yankees fans are ecstatic the Astros are out of there.
Yeah, they won't have to be eliminated by the Astros again. Although I would say that I would caution them that if the Tigers could move on, they cannot also beat the Tigers. So Yankees, I think, are cursed for a time being.
Right. The Yankees are cursed because the Cleveland Guardians franchise has always been their nemesis in the playoffs for years and years and years and years.
More like Tigers. Tigers have not been able to beat the Tigers because Cleveland at least they beat in 22, but Tigers they have not figured out how to beat them.
No.
Period.
So let's talk about this matchup because it's divisional. They see each other a lot. But let's start with Cleveland. Cleveland has a Cy Young candidate in themselves and Emmanuel Clase as a closer. They have a very young rotation. Shane Bieber is injured. The fans are going to obviously travel. So you have two top-level pitchers in different roles in their team, obviously. A young rotation, but Cleveland's got a fairly strong bullpen because they, won the division. And the basic notion is this constant momentum real? Because this season is at downright magical and was to a point of bizarre world for the Tigers at this point. To go from a 0% chance only 2 months ago making the postseason to winning the first series against a reigning champion to keep going. Like it's a keep going. So the Guardians, because I think the Guardians are the team with the most unknowns left of newest to the party here. They're 9th in the AL and WRC plus and have an edge over the Tigers in fielding. So that's defensively, not,
Yeah, both batting and defensively, they
Right.
have an edge.
Right. So they both are edge in offense and defense. Starting pitching, the Tigers have the best FIP, and the Guardians are 13th. So advantage Tigers. Guardians have a stronger bullpen. And if you listen to a lot of punditry talk about bullpens when you playoff games. So it's a split pretty much there. Pitching strategy. You can only pitch Tarek Skubal one time. And then you got these other people you have to kind of manage in between. Like they did a bullpen game. They'll probably do a bullpen game at least one more time. Are they gonna put down a Kenta Maeda to start a game? I don't know.
I think he's probably out of the roster. The combo is probably going to be Olsen, Mize, Montero, and then use Vest, Holton.
Right, they use Holton as the opener.
Yeah.
So it's got to be some combination of that. So they have a very strange pitching alignment beyond Skubal.
But we expect that from AJ Hinch. So
yeah, because I mean that's how he won with the Astros when he did it.
I mean, I forgot to mention that was the homecoming for AJ Hinch, and it's kind of funny that he's the one who started that Houston Invitational, and then he closed it.
Yeah, he opened it, closed it very, very, very quickly. To the Guardians. The Guardians have a former Tiger who's doing quite well from them after returning from a significant injury, Tommy John surgery, and that's Matthew Boyd. Matthew Boyd was the left-handed ace for the Tigers for a number of years. Bounced around a little bit, came back to them last year, now is with the Guardians, and he's been a solid member of that rotation with the Guardians losing some valuable pitching. And also the Guardians have, Alex Cobb, and they have Tanner. Is it Bybee or Bibby?
Bybee, and he's the de facto ace now that
So,
Shane Bieber's been shut down.
Right. I always mispronounce his name every time I write it down. So you got Bybee, and he's going to play. He's obviously here's your game oneer. And it's deploy the bullpen. How you deploy that bullpen, because that bullpen, if that bullpen can obviously beat out the Tigers bullpen. Like that's a really simple analysis there. Because I think that's, of all the phases of their team, that's the strongest phase of their team, is that bullpen. I think a lot of the fan graphs are what they kind of think is the most optimal scenario here is probably a win in 4 for the Guardians, is what they probably are predicting. I don't really quite know how it's going to be. The the predictions for starting are Olsen versus Bybee in game 1, the lefty versus lefty in game 2, Scubo versus Boyd. And then you'll have Alex Cobb coming for game 3, and then we'll have bullpen games and some combination thereafter. But let's go to that bullpen. That Cleveland bullpen. We saw the Detroit bullpen in game 2. Holton, Vest, like those guys can really hold it down. Other than Class A, what bullpen members of the Guardians are you looking out and saying like don't want to face them?
Well, they have three great trio in Cade Smith, Hunter Gaddis, and Tim Herron, and then potential in their starting pitching prospect Joey Cantillo. It's going to be a very deep bullpen, and if you look at their stats, you're talking about a sub-2 ERA across all 4, including Class A. Was Class A at 0.61 this year, and then they all pitch at least 65 innings here too. Cade Smith 1.91 ERA, Hunter Gaddis 1.57 ERA, and then Tim Herron 1.92. So it's a very deep bullpen.
And Cade Smith has a K rate over a third, which is well above any of those members that you just mentioned, above Class A, above Gaddis, above Herron. You got four legitimate bullpen players. Because again, this goes back to like the Yankees in the 90s, get to the 6th inning and the rest is predicted out. It was like, get Pettit, Clemens, who at Wells to the 6th inning. You got a 7th, you got an 8th, you got a 9th. They have a 7th, they have an 8th, they have a 9th. They may have a 6th. They may have a 6th. Cantillo could possibly, slide in there too. So all you have to do is get your starting pitcher to like through 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, run it again and again. Because another thing everyone should look out for is the schedule for these divisional games is not back to back skip, and then there's a day break a few times in between here. So that might benefit. I think will benefit the starting pitching of Detroit more, but the bullpen of Cleveland more. Because the bullpen of Cleveland, you can tax them a little bit, and they're gonna be okay. So that's the pitching side of Cleveland that we're learning more about. Let's go to the offense. Steven Kwan is one of my favorite players to watch in all of baseball. It's been rough the last couple of weeks. He was injured, had been on a cold streak. But then you go to Jose Ramirez, bona fide superstar. How much of a bona fide superstar is Jose Ramirez in your opinion?
He should have been a 40-40 guy who got snapped because of the weather. So they never got to play game 162 to get him that 40-40 club.
And then you have, the Naylor brothers on top of that. Lane Thomas, you got a great set of utility players. The one I always follow is Will Brennan because I think Tom Hamilton loves saying his name so much, the radio broadcaster. But they just have a collection of random players, again, like from the Francona years and going back. Because this is Steven Vogt baseball. Give me a bunch of random players, and I will make each one of them be really good. And he did that this year, obviously. Jose Ramirez leading the pack by a long shot. But, Steven Kwan, not doing so well. Bo Naylor, Josh Naylor, step up, do your thing. Will Brennan play the games when Steven Kwan's out? Lane Thomas takes over the games he needs to take. They just have every type of player you need to fit into this. The thing is, they don't need momentum. Like, I don't think the Tigers needed momentum to be this good. They were a good bunch of players, and they just hit something. The Guardians have all of these players who kind of like the Diamondbacks last year. Diamondbacks were competitive in a very competitive. They were playing well in a competitive division against the Dodgers, the Padres, all of those players. But you put a Corbin Carroll with a Ketel Marte, and they hand off each other back and forth. 2 MVP level players, and then you'd have just players that step up here and there and there. Same thing here. You have an all-star MVP level player in Jose Ramirez. Steven Kwan is probably your next on your list. Rough year for Steven Kwan. Josh Naylor, Bo Naylor, Lane Thomas. You just keep going, and then talk about the utility players. I mentioned Will Brennan, but there's a couple other players.
David Fry is probably one of the notable one who's had a hot streak throughout the summer, dog day of summer. And I think what makes the Guardians bench unique is they're very much of a platoon strategy where was David Fry. You have him hitting against lefty who has a career WOBA with a WOBA of 396. You have Angel Martinez, shortstop prospect, playing third in actually outfield this year, who's also probably going to bat against lefty. And then you have Daniel Schneemann, I think is his name, who plays third, shortstop, outfield. He's probably going to hit more against. Surprisingly, he's hitting well against lefty, but he's a platoon bat. And you have Noel, who's been a monster. He's like basically Franmil Reyes reborn, just smacking the ball, baseball out of the park. And then the Tampa Bay prospect that they traded for was Aaron Civali last year, Kyle Manzardo. He's hitting really well against righties at 311 was weighted WOBA, right? So I think that's going to be a crazy combo that I want to see. How
you just named 5 platoon players. How many teams can say they have 5 legitimate platoon players to throw at anything? And that's on top of, like you said, all the other players we talked about.
Yeah.
And now we're going to go down to the Tigers. You said in our preview of the Tigers here against the Astros, Colt Key, Kerry Carpenter, Parker Meadows, they all need to step up here. Every one of them did. Every one of them did. In particular, Riley Green and Parker Meadows really shined, I would say. Torkelson has had a rough year. He did what he needs to do. Play in first, play good defense, and don't strike out. And like when players are on base, like move them up. Fine. The hitters are going to take care of themselves. It's the bullpen. Because Foley showed a little bit of wariness at the back end. So you can't obviously get that far. So it's basically going to be a test between these two teams. Who's going to go bullpen quicker and who's going to pick the right players in the right order in that bullpen. Because as we have seen, especially in the Braves Brewers series, the order in which you go to your bullpen matters. And I think this series is going to say that too, because we can say without a doubt, statistically proven, the Guardians have a far superior bullpen than the Tigers. I think that's going to be probably your number one factor in this game is the bullpen strategy. Wouldn't you think that's probably?
Yeah, I think it's also managerial decisions between a veteran manager versus a rookie manager, right? Versus how Hinch and Voit, how they decide to deploy their arms, when to pull their pitchers, and when to start replacing bats. And I think in the Houston series, Hinch shown that he knew when to put the right guys. Andy Ibanez is not a everyday player, and he came in clutch in that game.
No, that was surprising. It's like he used the your random players to do the work. All right. We've ended that. We'll end there on that one. So that game starts at 1:00 on Saturday, TBS and Max if you are subscribed. This is what I'm going to go. If you had your storylines, obviously Motor Kitty's win is probably going to be your number one. You think popularity vote? No, I'm going with Baltimore Orioles lays a dud 2 years in a row at home because wow, did Kansas City put the screws to them.
And then I think they have the longest losing streak in the playoffs. It's because Minnesota already broke theirs last year, right? So
right,
now 10-game losing streak.
Right. So Kansas City wins game 1 on an RBI infield single by Bobby Witt Jr. Cole Reagans versus Corbin Burns was exceptional, but it took an RBI infield single, 1-run shutout wins the game. That's pretty much it. Cut dry. There's not a lot of activity. Pitcher's duel. Game 2 kind of shapes up to be the same thing. Vinny Pasquantino shows up off the injured list and does what he needs to do. Witt Jr. with another infield single goes 3 for 9 in the series. The only run was a Cedric Mullins home run. Gunnar Sanderson goes hitless. Zach Eflin, who you predicted would pitch, versus Seth Lugo. They both go fewer than 5 innings, and they still lose. So this is a really, I'd say it's kind of almost like a red alert for the Orioles. You just can't lose games like this again.
Yeah, I think off season is going to be a bigger questions for the Orioles. I mean, now like you had, the rookie renaissance of like, having the honeymoon stage of getting into the postseason, but now you got to make deep into the playoffs, and not winning is unacceptable at this point, especially with the bat going too cold.
Right, their bats are too cold, and the pitching needs to get a little bit of a little bit. They got Corbin Burns, that was a push,
but he's a free agent, so
right. So you got to push. You need more of a push. You need more push on the rotation, the bullpen. That's what they need to do, because the bats. I think the bats can wake up when they need to. They just didn't wake up. So there we go. Royals move on, and they go to the Bronx, who they just played the Yankees at the end of September and lost 2-3. So it's AL MVP runner-up, probably, versus AL MVP probable winner. Judge versus Witt Jr. Power, speed, defense are pretty much the Witt Jr. recipe for success. The Royals have a really strong defense, 7th in defensive runs saved. Excellent controlling the run game. Don't allow a lot of stolen bases. Bullpen depth. I think bullpen is a weakness for both to a certain degree. Because, yes, we've talked about the bullpens of the Royals being quite good, but also the bullpens of the Royals can also kind of cut you back a little bit. Like they got Urseg at the end, but the middle's a little bit iffy.
I mean, middle is just a lot of duct tape of like starters converted into bullpen. Bubich, right. Serpa,
and
you name it.
The Yankees, we'll talk about the Yankees this time, but the Yankees got some questions there too.
Yep.
They did throw, last goals innings, the Royals bullpen, but we'll see. Vinny Pasquantino coming back off the injured list was I think it just relieves them. Because you don't have to put, so much on these new acquisitions like Pham and all the other players that have stepped in and played up. Vinny Pasquantino's been there for a while. He's a great hitter. You still have Salvi. You never underestimate the power of the implicit power of Salvador Perez. Every player that goes up, every pitcher in that game, every batter knows at some point in this order, Perez is going to bat. Every pitcher knows at some point, if I'm throwing, I'm probably going to throwing the Salvi. He will get me through this. I don't think the Yankees have a player like that anymore. I mean, Judge has been there for a while. Stanton's been there for a while. You have like all these players. But there is Marcus Stroman's probably the one player I can think of as like he's been there. He's been around the block a while. He can kind of handle himself. But Salvador Perez is a special person. And character-wise, that matters in the postseason. And we think about who's going to be throwing to him, at least on the rotation. We saw Reagans. He's coming back. We saw Lugo. He's going to pitch again. And the one pitcher we didn't see was Michael Wacha. So Walker's been there before. Has he been there before with both the Red Sox and the Cardinals?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been there before. Lugo's obviously been around the block a while. And Lugo's it's a return to New York for him. Obviously on the wrong side of the wrong borough, but he's been there before. And then Cole Reagans obviously is their ace. So they solved the starting rotation. It's that bullpen that we're all, a little concerned about. Let's flip it over. The new team to this party is the New York Yankees. Aaron Judge is your MVP candidate. Juan Soto is trying to convince him to stay. And Giancarlo Stanton is the other power bat who needs to, step up and play to his potential. Other than that, the rest of that team is just a hodgepodge of players and potential rookie of the year candidate in Austin Wells. Jazz Chisholm is the newest acquisition, plays third. We lean on him a little bit. But this series is probably going to go all the way. Because I think the Yankees are probably going to win 2. The Royals are probably going to win 2. It's going to be decided. It's going to be either 1-1, 1-1, or 2-2, and then a game decider. That's pretty much the only way it can go. But let's take a look at the starting rotation here. Very briefly. For the New York Yankees, predict for me their starters.
Garrett Cole, Luis Gil, Carlos Rodon. I think that's your top 3. And then Stroman for game 4, maybe.
Right. They're probably the only team left in the American League that can go 4 deep in the starting rotation and be fine. And the fact that your 4th starter is the person I name is probably the linchpin. Because Garrett Cole is, he's played with the Astros, with the Yankees. He's been through this whole thing. But Stroman's kind of like, people have really pushed him through the ringer because they criticize him consistently. But when he needs to show up, he shows up. And I think that's what's going to matter a lot. Is we predict he goes to go 5 games. The Yankees have a 4th starter. The Royals, I'm not sure if I can count on the Royals' 4th starter, much as I can count on a Stroman, Rodon, flip them around, whoever you're going to order them, and then because they're probably going to end up pitching Stroman and Rodon in Kansas City.
I think my biggest concern for the Yankees is outside of the 3 big bats you mentioned, not having consistent bat. Hopefully Dominguez is going to be bringing that, but other than that, the bullpen's really concerning because, unfortunately, Clay Holmes kind of blew up after the second half after being named an All-Star, and all you have left is Luke Weaver.
And Luke Weaver saved them so many times. Like he saved them so many times late in the season. So that's that. So Fangraphs predicts this to be a Cleveland in 4 and a Yankees in 5. So a rematch of the 90s in the ALCS kind of predicted. But we've covered the AL. We're heading into the night here on the East Coast, but we got one more, get the National League to predict. And boy, oh boy, do we have some fun in the National League to talk about. So coming after the break, we're heading to Milwaukee and San Diego to talk about what happened. Today's episode of Sayonara Baseball is presented by Anchor, the Spotify for podcasters. You know this. We've been here for a while talking about them as our sponsor. It's a platform that helps create and deliver you this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It is available at no cost to whoever chooses to use them. Again, it's accessible on the go or at home. To get started, anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start. Welcome back. Wild card round review, divisional round preview. We did the American League before the break. We're going to the National League, and we have to start in Milwaukee because what is going on with the New York Mets? It's like it's like July again.
Yep.
So let's go back to Monday. Kazuki and I were broadcasting at 5 o'clock. Well, no, not 4 o'clock. 5:50, 6 o'clock. The middle of game 2. The Mets pull off the most ridiculous comeback in game 1 of that series, clinch the playoffs, throw a B team in, get shut out, and they're going to Milwaukee. Atlanta then's going to San Diego. We thought they have to play another game on Tuesday night. So the Mets have played Sunday in Milwaukee, Monday twice in Atlanta, and now Tuesday in Milwaukee, Wednesday in Milwaukee, and Thursday in Milwaukee. So let's start on Tuesday night. The Mets win 8-4. This game collapsed in the 5th inning. How do you explain? Other than that, I call it the botched handoff. That's what they call it on the radio. But Payamps and Ashby come in. Payamps allows 3 run-ins. Ashby allows another 2 without getting an out. And, what happened? I don't really know how to explain it. And there was just a comedy of errors in the 5th inning in that game.
Yeah, the Milwaukee defense that was top notch in the league this year, fell apart in the 5th inning. You start off with a misread by Churio, who's really steady in the outfield, misread the Tyrone Taylor double. And then later on in the inning, in the crucial tie game, Willie Adames, botches a play. And
great defensive shortstop. What happened there? And like I said, Payamps and Ashby what's going on there?
And then they got Babbitt to hell at this point, right? Just a bunch of singles, just bloopers, anything falling in.
Right. And they score and they find a way to win 8-4. Okay. Momentum is rolling along with them, which is a concept which we are seeing in Detroit and playing out with Detroit and Houston. Game 2 comes along, and the Mets have this in the bag. It seems like they're just going and going, they're going, and then we get to the 8th inning. So Jackson Churio leads off the game for the team with a home run. Get to the 8th inning, he's up again, and he hits another home run to tie this game. And then pinch hit madness in Milwaukee. Garrett Mitchell comes up. I think they were like,
Oh, it's a tie game, 3-3.
it's a
right?
tie game 3-3. And he bombs away to deep center field. And what is happening? What is happening? It's like the Milwaukee Brewers just looked in the mirror of the Mets and said, if you can do it, we'll do it too. So the Milwaukee Brewers did exactly what the Mets did on Monday afternoon, pull out a victory, win 5-3. Maton blows everything up. The bullpen finally picks them. Bullpen Brewers for the Brewers goes 5 1/3 strong. And it's like, the game's flipped around. So we have a decisive game 5. Game 3, the only game 3 in any of these series. It goes 0-0 to the 7th. Jake Bauers, journeyman of all journeymen in this series, it seems like, unloads a home run. 1-0. The very next pitch. Fan favorite Sal Frelick goes back to back. So it's 2-0 in the bottom of the 7th. They got this, we know. Got this all set up. Go to the top of the 9th. And if you can find the video online, watch Pete Alonso's at bat with the Howie Rose radio dubbed on top of it. Because during the at bat, Howie Rose said, quote, it could be his last Mets at bat. It could be his most memorable. And it was the latter. Because with 2 on and the top of the 9th, Pete Alonso looked like he pokes it to right field. And it just gets over. And the Mets bullpen out in right field is going crazy. Pete Alonso's losing his mind. And Howie Rose is going nuts on the broadcast. John Shambi, Doug Glanville, and ESPN are going absolutely crazy because they cannot believe what just happened. The Mets have done this 3 times in a week, not even half a week. They tack on one more. Jesse Winker, the former Brewer, who's like, scorched earth at this point with them, throws down his helmet, scores a run. They have 4-2. And just to ice this, Kazuki, who did the Mets pick to pitch to close out the 9th inning?
Peterson.
David Peterson. What did David Peterson do on Sunday?
Pitched his guts out, 8 innings pitched against the Brewers, the same team.
Shut them out over 8 innings. He does exactly that.
And I would say in that final play, it was 1 on, 1 out. Lindor literally tells Acuna to go away, and he steps on the back and throws a laser to first base, kind of proving that. And it was a really close play too. That the fact that he didn't even flip the ball, right? So that was like a cool, right.
Move. He zoomed, like he was running as fast as he can. But David Peterson basically goes Randy Johnson in this series. Like big lefty comes in and just starts throwing complete heat to end it. Like we've seen this before. Like teams will bring out their a top-notch lefty starter and just throw him at the most critical parts of games. I mean, I use Randy Johnson because he's probably the biggest example I think. Chris Sale has done this.
Funny enough, Patrick Corbin, he wouldn't say that today, but Patrick Corbin did that for the Nationals in 2019.
Right. So, and this is over. And the Mets are going to move on and play, the one of 2 rivalry divisional series in this match. Spoiler, the Padres beat the Braves. But let's go to this crazy series we're about to start on.
Hold on. Actually, I do want to go one back to talk about the Pete Alonso bat. If anyone saw the John Boy's breakout, apparently Devin Williams was known to be tipping his pitches. So the Mets scouting, props to the Mets scouting, they found out that his glove side was really high up when he was throwing a changeup and literally more closer to the chest and deep into the glove when he was throwing a fastball. And I think the hitting coach kind of told Pete Alonso that, hey, watch out when it goes on top. And then literally, I think Pete Alonso was sitting on the changeup and then
because he
there we
waited for the
go.
3-1 count. Yeah, he
Yep.
hit the home run 3-1 count.
Yeah.
So yeah. So again, Devin Williams was Devin Williams had a terrible moment. He's one of the best bullpen pitchers in all of baseball.
Yep.
Without question. And he had a really bad moment.
Yep. He only allowed 3 earned runs across 19 innings this season after coming back from the All-Star break. And, and he tends to be the guy who who gets runners on base, but leaves them, they don't score. But it just came in a bad moment where all his earned run kind of came in this critical moment.
Came crashing down on the biggest stage for him.
Yep.
And the same thing, Josh Hader's the same thing for Houston. And Ryan Presley. Some of the best bullpen pitchers in all of baseball, and the whole world came crashing down on them right then and there. But now New York is going to travel, and Saturday we'll play the Philadelphia Phillies.
At the bank.
At the bank. So the first 2 games are at the bank. The second 2 games are at the other bank. So they're both banks. It's Citizens Bank and Citi Field. It's an I-95 series, so it reminds us all of like football. It reminds us of basketball. It reminds us of hockey. Like, this is going to be just utter madness at both stadiums. What do the Mets have? The Mets have this momentum concept going with them. They have, a rested up bullpen, and we have just seen that Pete Alonso can do something pretty remarkable. And oh yeah, you have a starter who what's going to happen with David Peterson? You don't need him to start. You can put him in the bullpen and close out games. Because we got breaking news. Kodai Senga is going to start game 1 after pitching 8 innings this year?
Yeah, only 2 starts?
2 starts. Okay. So now Carlos Mendoza is like, my secret weapon is David Peterson. And Sean Manaea pitched well. Okay.
He's basically the poor man Chris Sale, throwing the same arm angle too.
Right. Jose Quintana. They talked about, by the way, Manaea changing his arm angle to make him a more effective pitcher. And so far, seems to be decently working. So for in this era,
I mean, we need to highlight how underrated Quintana's Game 3 performance was.
Right, Quintana, because Quintana shut them out. You have to remember, Quintana and Tobias Myers. Tobias Myers.
Yeah.
So that was a shutout. But here's your starting rotation potentially for the Mets for the divisional series: Senga, Severino, Quintana, and Manaea, and potentially Peterson. But you don't need him because you can throw Peterson in the 9th,
or even be the long man after Kodai. In game 1,
which potentially they might do because Kodai Senga's coming back pitching only less than 10 innings in a season. What the Phillies have on the other side is top-notch rotation. Zach Wheeler is a Cy Young candidate if Chris Sale would have just, not won Triple Crown. Ranger Suarez and Aaron Nola, they were just there last year. Granted, they lost the Diamondbacks, but they were just there. And then you go on the others, and you go into on the offensive side: Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto. Need I say more? It keeps going and going and going and going and going. And home field advantage for the Phillies far outweighs home field advantage for the Mets. I'm sorry, New York fans, but it's true. To our friend Justin, it cannot be argued that that stadium is louder than any other stadium you're going to hear. Maybe Petco. Petco is going to get close, but nothing's going to beat you. I mean, if you listen to our episode with Todd, when Todd went to the series last year, Todd told us just how unbelievably loud he was, and he couldn't believe how loud it was.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's a fight of the 2 toxic fan bases, which seems to be the same theme for the NLDS in general.
So what the Mets need to win, the starters need to do exactly what they did in Milwaukee. Go as long as you can and keep the other team off the bags. Just do that. Even when they give up an early home run, they still held together. Pete Alonso, if he can do what he just did in game 3, on a regular basis, get on base even, great. because the ragtag bunch of other players and wily vets that they have thrown in together on this team could do the rest. Francisco Lindor is a fantastic player. He can carry your team. Pete Alonso, play the supporting role. Win the Oscar for his best actor in supporting role. Because the rest of that is Tyrone Taylor has made a household name of himself for just picking up the pieces where he needs to do. You have, Starling Marte. Okay, I'll play a couple innings and, get a couple good hits. Acuna, I'm going to play every inning that I can and just get on base. And the last part is play defense.
And we got to name Mr. OMG himself, Jose
Iglesias, right? So the random parts need to play, good baseball and, not let the Phillies put up 8-9 runs in a game. Because if they do that, they're going to win. At least I think they are going to win. For the Phillies, the best pitcher between any of these teams is Zach Wheeler. He has started 32 games, pitched 200 innings, has a WAR over 5 in a 2.57 ERA. He is a former Met. This is going to feel a little bit weird. However, Zach Wheeler pitching for the Phillies at home in game 1, we presume. That's presume what's going to happen, right?
Yep.
That crowd is going to be so far behind him. So much noise. Every single two strike count. Because they know it could happen. Because that every 2 strike count, they're going to be behind him. And so long as Wheeler keeps throwing at them and getting the Mets off balance, the crowd's going to pick him up. That's all they need. Because the rest is the power. We talk about the power bets. You got to limit your power bets. You got 230 home run hitters in Harper and Schwarber. Trey Turner, when he's on, he's on. Alec Bohm was an all-star. Keep going. Just run them out.
And I think I told Brandon this, but basically Phillies is your best ideal version of a softball beer league.
Right, because you have a bunch of all you have to get to the middle of the order, and you'll get on base, home run, on base, home run. It's just like that kind of a situation. Yeah, but I think of our softball team, we had a great up front, we had a good 1-2 hitter, and then we get to our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and it's like we'll pile on the runs. And then if you're lucky, you'll get some, I was a 9-hole hitter. If you're lucky, you get a 7, 8, 9 to, turn it over. 1, 2, 3, 4 again. And because we saw that this season, we saw it last year with this team. You turn you'll end up over. There's not a real weak spot in this lineup. The one thing that we do have to remember is Christopher Sanchez pitching. How would you frame the Christopher Sanchez versus Mets scenario in this thing?
I would say he is probably one of the dominant. He's going to probably come out of the bullpen. It will be pretty dominant against him. I think you have the stats on Sanchez, but I believe he's 2-0 against them this season.
Right, and he got one started. He's got one win. He got one. He's gone against them 3 times, gone 5 innings at least. The shortest outing was 5 innings, and that was the win. So he's got their number. He can do the damage he's got to do. But can he do it? The Fangraphs prediction says a 5-game series, Mets win. Going drama filled, momentum filled, whatever you want to call it. That's what's going to do it. I don't know what's going to happen. I think a lot rides on game 2.
Yeah. I honestly don't know how to think of this. It's going to be a chaotic series is what I could say.
It's game 2 or bust. And I think that's what's going to be. All right. So that's that. Let's go to what happened in a very predictable yet unconventional Atlanta versus San Diego series. San Diego wins, sweeps in 2. We both thought game 1 was the Dylan Cease game. Who pitched game 1?
The King of the Hill.
Michael King, who was a trade piece in the Juan Soto deal. Michael King goes 7 strong. And how many strikeouts did Michael King get?
Dozen.
A dozen in a postseason game. Shut them out, obviously. Allowed 5 hits. And then his former Yankee teammate, Kyle
was also,
Higashioka
was also part of that Soto deal.
goes 1 for 2 with a sac fly and a solo home run. Fernando Tatis hits a 2-run home run. The bullpen did the minimal amount they needed to do and was great. Manny Machado with a great defensive play in the game. Atlanta's bullpen did fine, but everything else was a dud. And they obviously couldn't score a run. I couldn't believe 6 and 2/3, 1 hit, 1 earned, 1 walk, and 5 Ks for the Atlanta bullpen, and they still lost.
And that's right after they played a doubleheader against the Mets in Atlanta and flew to San Diego.
And they maxed their bullpen in that game. So can they turn around game 2? Kind of. But the second inning was really good for the home team. Higashioka goes yard again. Machado gets a 2 RBI double, and Jackson Merrill seals it with a 2 RBI triple. Soler and Michael Harris, go tag team on home runs. Braves throw 6 innings again of shutout bullpen baseball. Padres go with Musgrove, preserving Dylan Cease. It's a 5-4 win for the home team. And this series is all wrapped up with a bow. Chris Sale is injured. We never see him. Max Fried loses the game in game 2. And we have the I-5 rivalry here. Take the Pacific Surfliner for one stadium together, literally almost. And we have the Southern California rivalry game. Almost called the South Carolina rivalry game, but that's, Clemson, South Carolina football. We're not there yet. So it's Padres, Dodgers. Dodgers, obviously, fans are going to travel down. And the Padre fans are absolutely going to travel up to Dodger Stadium. So we got Shohei, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, whatever combination of how they're doing. And then Teoscar Hernandez, going for the Dodgers as their best hitters. Pitching matchups, finally Dylan Cease is going to pitch, we think. I think we presume so, against Yamamoto. Then Darvish versus Flaherty. And then game 3 through 5 is a toss-up for both teams. Fernando Tatis Jr., Kyle Higashioka, Jackson Merrill are your Padres hitters to watch. Jackson Merrill clutch hitting is probably going to be important in this series, don't you think? I think that's going to be.
I think that's a difference maker compared to the past few years of Padres baseball in the playoffs, right? Just having clutch hitting overall, and then having Tatis actually back in the playoffs is probably going to be what's going to be driving the Padres even further. Because if in 2022, if Tatis was actually there, I think they would have made it a lot further, And I think the Dodgers' concern right now, besides the pitching, was all their injuries right now. Freddie Freeman not completely healthy. It's going to be really, really, really bad situation for them.
Yeah, this series is all about depth. Who can go deeper into their bench? Who go deeper in their bullpen? Who go deeper in the rotation? That's it. It's a depth game. It's a game of depth. Because in the past 2 times, we had the Padres getting revenge in 2022, Cody Bellinger going AWOL in 2020, just going absolutely ham on them. So 2024, you got Ohtani. He's new to the party in this rivalry in the postseason. And Tatis Jr. is actually, playing. That's it. It's a game of depth, and it's a game of who's going to show up and who of the new boys is going to show up. I think Jack Flaherty is going to have an outsized impact because he is a steadying force on this team. Game 1, who's going to score the first run in game 1? That's what I think is going to be the most important.
It's a tricky one because Dylan Cease could be, he's a Jekyll and Hyde situation. He could be absolutely lights out, or he could get torched like he did in his last start of the season in Dodger Stadium already, and that was like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, because the first game is in Dodger Stadium. It's in Los Angeles. This series is a toss-up, honestly. 5 games most probably could go either way. Dodgers probably are slightly on the downside only because all the injuries.
Yeah, and I think the biggest wild card for the Dodgers, I think, is the $700 million man who's never played a postseason game ever in his career outside of Japan. So
right, this is MLB postseason game number 1 for Shohei Ohtani. And on that, thank you for joining us in our postseason episode. Games start tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. And then check your local TV listings because they bounce around a lot. It goes 4, then there's a break for 2 teams, and they're off again, and then on again. And then it until you get to game 3, it's a bit of a piecemeal schedule. But shout outs to our friends, Cowboy Bob, to regular Virginia, to all the wonderful, wonderful puppies. That's Boone, that's Winnie, Bandit, Gatsby, and everyone else. I mean, the next game, the next round of our podcast is the league championship preview and the divisional review, presumably in a week, maybe. You go through up to 5 games. Until then, enjoy the baseball. Do not get caught up in the madness of either of all the rivalries, because we have 3 divisionals going on. But just enjoy it. I think this is going to be, it's exciting to have these teams, the Motor Kitties, the Detroit Tigers in the American League doing what they've done, and the New York Mets. I don't know how to describe what they've done the last 5 days. So on that note, keep your eyes and ears locked for something memorable, and we'll see you again probably in about a week. And we're clear.